From 0 church members to an ECFA member in less than 10 years. Hear from our special guest, Executive Pastor Matt Martin, as he shares Northrock Church's journey from church plant to its thriving ministry today in San Antonio, Texas.
Informing, encouraging, and supporting your church. You're listening to the Excellence in Church Administration podcast from ECFA.
Hey everyone, this is Michael Martin, and it is my privilege to welcome you to another Excellence in Church Administration podcast. Well, hey, you are in for a real treat today as we welcome special guest Matt Martin, the executive pastor of Northrock Church in San Antonio, Texas, to join us. We recently got to know Matt and his church better when they became one of our newest ECFA members. And in that process, as Matt just shared with us about their church's journey of financial integrity and enhancing trust, I knew that their story was one that we just had to share on the podcast. And so, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. Looking forward to our time together.
Awesome. Well, hey, as we get started here, I've got a funny story, a little bit of a confession to share with you, Matt. I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but my brother actually has the same name. He is Matt Martin.
Yes.
Yes. I am sorry if you've ever received like an accidental FaceTime call from me or something like that. I actually ended up having to change my brother's number in my phone to avoid that. So
I did. I received a text from you on Christmas Eve, and I had no idea what you were talking about. So I just smiled and put my phone back in my pocket.
Awesome. Well, thanks for ignoring that and tolerating that with us. But anyway, we are so glad that you're here and so excited for you just to get to share a little bit of your story and what God has been up to at Northrock. I'm excited to let others in on a sneak peek of that. So maybe just tell us a little bit in terms of your background and how you got involved at Northrock.
Absolutely. We just celebrated on January the 18th, 9 years of Northrock being in existence. And it has been an incredible journey, and it's been a great opportunity for so many incredible things and God moments along the way. It's probably been just one of the highlights of it. But I moved to San Antonio. I grew up in Texas all of my life, and I lived about 4.5 hours from San Antonio in southeast Texas. And Pastor Jonathan and I have been friends for many years, and he was living in Austin at the time, and I called, and we were talking, and he began to tell me about what God was laying on his heart and what was happening in his world, and moving to North San Antonio to start a church. And my wife and I, we talked about it, we prayed about it, and we jumped on the journey, and we went both feet in and said, let's see what happens. And it was awesome. It was awesome. We started, we had 118 people at our very first service, and we had the most amazing Gideon revival the next week, and 64 people showed up the next week. And it was amazing. And so the first year, I began to even question if we had what it would take to reach 100 people in our church, because we just could not get there. And finally, at the end of that first year, we finally broke 100, like 2 weeks in a row, and man, we were celebrating like crazy. But we started out in an elementary school in what they call a cafetorium, and it is it was just a big cafeteria with a stage at one end of it. And so you're limited on what you can do, set up and tear down. We were portable. We were there 2.5 years, moved to a high school, and the church began to grow. And we were in the high school theater room or theater building in the high school. And from there, the church grew to about 300 people, 350 people. And it was at that time, and that is now 4.5 years ago, that we bought the building that we are in right now. And in a matter of 8 weeks, the church doubled, and then we quickly just kept seeing God do amazing things. So that's kind of the quick snapshot of it. My role obviously has developed over the years, as probably be the best way to say that. It's morphed into a lot of things. Early on, I had a 3/4 ton diesel truck, and I hooked up to the trailer and we made church happen every week, and then during the week, taking care of the administrative side of what happens, and then as we got into the building, obviously roles changed there. So I've seen the spectrum of church planting from planning it to where we're at, getting ready to celebrate 10 years here over the next year. So.
That's awesome. Well, and how cool that you have gotten to be there from the beginning and just to get to be such a huge part of what God is doing. And I think you had shared with me before that you came out of a little bit of a business background too. So maybe tell us, like, how has that been helpful as you've transitioned into that executive pastor role at Northrock, which, by the way, we love executive pastors at ECFA.
Yes.
And we appreciate what you guys do. So.
Well, it's unique. I look, in hindsight, it's 2020. I look back over my life, and I got into ministry around age 18, 19, and really got into more full-time ministry at that age. And my family they were entrepreneurs, and my dad, my mom, we always had a business of some, family business. And so I grew up that way, and I grew up being around what it took to start a business, what it took to run a business. And for over 15 years, alongside of ministry, I would I was self-employed. I had a business, and so I had to understand the workings of it, and and there's deadlines that have to be met, and there are certain things that have to balance, and there are certain things that you have to get to a certain point before you can do the next thing, and just learning the basics of that and being on the front line of it. And there were times I was wondering, why am I doing this? Sometimes I needed the money, and sometimes I enjoyed the business that I was in as well. And looking back now and where I'm at, and I've since closed those businesses, and this is what I do full time. That's all my time allows. Is I see so many key areas and aspects of being in the marketplace that are extremely beneficial. And I enjoy the conversation with people now, and they'll say, "Well, why do you operate the church this way?" And I was like, "Well, it just makes good business sense." And the Bible speaks to this as well. And just watch people be amazed. I have so many conversations of people that are amazed at how the backside of the church is run like a business. You can't run it like that from the stage, but you have to have excellence in all of the details on the backside. And when people see that, they truly appreciate. And for me, it's just part of my DNA. So I just enjoy just putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
That's awesome. Well, and you're so right that, and we appreciate that excellence behind the scenes is what allows for the great ministry to happen that we all see.
Absolutely.
And so we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so Matt, you had mentioned that you guys are coming up here pretty soon on your 10-year anniversary, a year from now. And so one of the things that really just amazes me is that really that being less than 10 years old, you guys are already helping to plant, and you're coaching other new and growing churches in just the short time that you've even been a church. And so I think that's awesome how God is using you. What are a couple of the top lessons that you're sharing with some of the other leaders that you're working with that are starting newer, growing churches?
Oh, absolutely. And there's so many tools and organizations that are doing incredible jobs planting churches now. And when we didn't have those partnerships when we started, and we look back and wish that we had. But one of the things that I tell every church planter that I come in contact with, and the ones that we have the opportunity to work with, one of the first things I tell them is enjoy the journey. Enjoy the good days, and it's hard to say in the moment, but enjoy the days where you feel like, what, I kind of got kicked at a little bit today. I don't feel like I won today, but it's part of the journey. You're learning so much. And then I tell them this every time: make sure that you celebrate each milestone. And when you reach a new milestone, whatever that is, if the offering average was bigger this month than it was last month, then celebrate that. If the attendance was up, celebrate that. If baptisms, if you only baptized 2 and you were trying to baptize 10, celebrate the 2. Don't always be looking so far ahead that you miss what God is doing right in front of you. And it's easy to look around as we've heard people say that, especially with social media, we get to see everybody's highlight reel, and we don't get to see the backstage of what's really happening. And don't get caught up in the cool flashy pictures of what everybody else is doing, because you're really not seeing the whole story. You're living your whole story, and so enjoy it, celebrate it, learn from it. And thank God that you have the opportunity to do this, because what you do matters, and you're changing lives, and you're stepping into people's world that, had you not done this, who would have? Who would have started this church? Who would be here for that relationship? So enjoy it, celebrate each moment that comes along. And then another thing I always tell them, and this is, we learned this, we lived this, I should say, is don't quit. Don't quit. God is faithful. God is faithful. And when you need to spend your time, focus, and spend your time and focus reaching those that need Jesus. And then when you're reaching them, make sure you're always building people, and you're always building teams. I heard a pastor say a few years ago, and he said, if you'll be faithful reaching people, God will be faithful resourcing you. And when we stay true to the mission of the gospel, and that's in people that are in need of a Savior, and we create the environment and offer the opportunity for them to show up and experience life change, God has a way. He has a way of just supplying and resourcing everything that we need, and then it's our job to focus on them and to build the people. Sometimes we get so intent on building ministries or building programming that we forget we're really in the business of building people, and we're in the business of building teams for them to find a place of community and find a place to grow. And when we focus on building the right people, the right things follow.
Wow, that's good. See, now I know why you're already coaching other churches right here. That's some good stuff. So, well, hey, one of the things that just in getting to know you that I love is that perspective that you bring from the business background, serving as an executive pastor. And one of the things that you shared with me is that really from the beginning, that financial integrity has just been something that's been on the heart of Pastor Jonathan. It's been on your heart. Maybe just tell those who are listening, we're preaching to the choir a little bit, but what value have you seen, Matt, over the years, financial integrity playing in the local church? Why has that been such an important part of your DNA?
One, and some of this just goes back to some things my parents and my dad taught me. It's just the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. But the other thing that it really does is it builds confidence. And the second thing is it gives a sense of peace to those who are contributing. And it gives them the confidence to know that, you're doing the best you can to steward this. And so obviously we love it when someone, they write the big check, and they resource and take care of the overnight miracle, the check in the mail type stories. We love those. But what I've also found is when you have financial integrity and you have the accountability and the transparency you need, that you should have, it gives the other 90% who are faithfully giving week in, week out, month in, month out, it gives them the confidence to know that we are stewarding our resources well. And so I want the big donor to know as much as the person who's giving and tithing off of their Social Security check that's coming in, along with maybe a little bit of retirement funds that are coming in, that what's happening at my church is being handled well, and I have confidence in that. I have confidence in the decisions, and I have a sense of peace knowing that, because if we tell them, you're giving, I stood on the stage Sunday and said this, your giving is not just transactional, but it's spiritual, and it makes an eternal difference. And so if they understand and they have that confidence and that sense of peace in knowing, when I write this check, when I put that card number in, when I give this cash, that what I'm doing is spiritual, and it makes an eternal difference. And it's not just paying the light bill, and it's not just adding on to the building, and it's not just paying a salary, it's not just creating a place for kids to attend and be a part of. But what I'm a part of is changing someone's life. And when you have the financial integrity to show that, then they know, and they're walking away from it knowing, I just did something spiritual. I didn't just write a check. And so I see it, financial integrity, it makes it, when done well, makes it an even more spiritual experience for the contributor. And I look at it this way. This is all God's. It's my
Right.
responsibility to steward it well. And I must steward it with integrity, with trust, with accountability, with diligence. And I truly believe that the church should be setting the standard for businesses to follow on how to handle finances. And I think if when businesses in the communities think, man, how can we be better? How can we grow our business? How can we be better stewards of the money that we're making? They should be calling the church office and saying, give me the plan that you guys follow because it's working for you. So
That's awesome. Well, if you saw me over here, this is a huge amen from the ECFA office. And I mean, obviously, that's what made you guys such a great fit to become one of the newest ECFA members. And we just want to congratulate you guys again on that milestone. That's huge and something to celebrate, as you mentioned before. Maybe tell us too, Matt, and this kind of is a good segue into this, is, what was it about the ECFA standards that really attracted you guys to take that next step forward to become a certified member of ECFA?
there were a couple of things. One would be obviously the importance of the accreditation, because it's one thing to say that there's 4 or 5 people that look at these statements or that statements, or an outside accounting firm is conducting this compilation report or this audit or internal audit or whatever you're doing. But knowing that there's an independent body and the only focus that they're looking at is financial accountability, governance accountability, and that the decisions are being made in a way that there's not a lone ranger out there just kind of running wild with this. And knowing that, to have that stamp of approval. And a couple of things that I looked at with, there's obviously the standards that are set by ECFA, and knowing that, hey, there's things that you've got to produce and show that you're operating this way. And probably one of the things that I really enjoy, which is it's more work on all of us, but this isn't a one and done, because I know in 6 months that I'm going to be back on the phone. I'm going to be, answering emails. I'm going to be producing the paperwork and the whatever that is required, so that we can make sure we're staying inside of the standards of ECFA. And that was one of the things that attracted me, because it's one thing to pay a fee, put a rubber stamp on it, and say, oh, put this on the wall. But this is, to me, this organization creates a stamp of approval, and it's more of a living organism, more of a living document. And it's not sterile. It's not just, oh, well, we did that, and don't that look good? But no, this is something that causes us to stay on our toes, to stay sharp, and to make sure that we're being accountable. And this is one more guardrail that we need in our life for the integrity. And again, I'm going to go back to the word I used a while ago, is the confidence. For people to have the confidence. And that's what I wanted. I wanted, our church had gotten to a place and age and a size where it mattered. And I wanted our attendees, and I wanted those giving and those serving and those a part of this, and those even looking on from the outside in, knowing that, hey, I have confidence in that church, because I know they're stepping up and they're putting in the hard work, and they're following through with what they say. And I've learned over the years, and we use the word integrity a lot, and it kind of becomes a popular buzzword at times, but integrity is just simply, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. And ECFA is really the gold standard for that. For me to be able to stand up, and Pastor Jonathan to stand up to our church and say, this is what we're a part of. This is what we do, and we're not just saying it, but because of the standards that are in place, and because of coming back in 6 months and talking about this again and checking up on us, that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do.
Oh, that's really good. And I want to just kind of come back to something that you touched on, Matt, and that is just like, your heart and your motivation behind taking that step. And you talked about being able to speak to those that are in the congregation and for those that are on your team. I'd love to just hear, since you guys are really fresh, just out of this process, can you tell folks what the reaction has been like as the rest of your leadership team or your volunteers, those are in the congregation, what has been that reaction to Northrock becoming an ECFA member?
Oh, it's been an incredible response, and I've been able to personally tell a few people. And the first people I was able to tell was our trustee team, and we were in a one of our building meetings as we're getting ready to add on to our facility, and so we were meeting with our trustees. And I was able to sit down with them, and I just received the communication from you either like a couple hours before or the day before, something like that. And so when I sat down with them, with the people in the room that day, and they were just amazed, and they thought it such an incredible thing that we wanted to put our best foot forward in the best way possible. And so I explained to them, ECFA and what that looks like. And every one of them were just, it was just you could see their eyes light up. You could see the confidence they had in what we're doing. And, just kind of gave us the proverbial 2 thumbs up. And even this past Sunday, I had a short conversation with a gentleman who's been coming to Northrock for several years. And he serves on our teams. He's tithing. He's living it out. He's in a small group. He's all in, and I was able to share with him that we received this accreditation and certification, and he just looked at me and he just smiled real big, and he said, "Wow," he said, just knowing that right there, he said, that increases the confidence. He said of 70 to 80% of the people walking through these doors right now. He said, "Man, that is a game changer." He said, we need to paint this on every wall in here. Everybody needs to know how big of a deal this is. And he said, he said, this is a game changer for Northrock moving forward. He said, because people are just going to, he said, they're going to have the confidence that they need to know that this is being done right and it's being done well. And, everything we do should honor God. And this is just one more way that we can raise the bar in honoring God, and that we're being faithful stewards. And the last time I checked, I think that's about how the Scripture spells it out for us: is to be faithful stewards of what God has blessed us with. And what you guys do at ECFA, this gives the confidence and the showing that, hey, Northrock Church is doing what's necessary to be that faithful steward.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, Matt, it's our privilege, honestly, to get to partner with you and just with so many other great churches and ministries like yours. And one thing I just love to hear is you guys, as you're sharing, I just believe God has an incredible future that's in store. You're just beginning to see what He has for you going into here about a year from now. We'll be celebrating your 10-year anniversary, your first 10 years. So, where do you guys see God leading as you look forward, maybe even on into the next 10 years?
Wow, it's a big question. It's a big question, and it's a great question. And Pastor Jonathan and our team, we were talking about this, and what do the next few years look like? And we're constantly building our teams. We have a great leadership culture here at Northrock, and looking at what does this look like? And and one of the desires of our hearts, and we feel like God is leading us, is being a multi-site church. And what does that look like in San Antonio? What does that look like for Northrock? We're looking at, when we're hiring people now. That changes the questions we're asking. When we're bringing high-level volunteers into leadership positions, we're asking certain questions that would lean us that way. But I just finished a book by Jensen Franklin, and it was probably written 10 years ago. And I think it's Right People, Right Place, Right Plan. And one of the things that we're believing for is for God to do what God does best, and that's the miraculous. That's the miraculous. And one of the things that we say is we want to have we want to have moments along the way that we look back and say, only God. Right? Only God could have made that happen. But I was reading this book this month, and Pastor Jensen wrote something in this book that was so true. And we all want the miraculous in our life. But when you look at the scripture, God always gave them a plan, a miraculous plan. And so he would do things, obviously, what God did with Noah and, saving Noah and his family, but he gave him a plan to build an ark. And if you look through the scripture, there was, the widow woman that was the debt collectors were coming and trying to take her sons and to take everything that she owned. And God told her, go get the pots. And she said, I only have one vat of oil. He said, tell them to go get every pot they can. Well, they had to get a plan in place, and they had to go prepare a little bit. And they brought back the pots, and God performed the miracle. When you look at Jesus in the wedding at Cana, he told them, he said, go get the pots and fill them with water. And the miraculous happened while they were carrying the pot. What they poured in was water, but what they were carrying, and by the time it got to the host, it had turned to wine. God didn't ask them to perform the miracle. He just told them to carry the pot. And so, there's what we're looking at as we plan for Northrock, and we plan, as you said, the next 10 years, we're looking at how can we prepare best, because we know that we're just going to be carrying the container that the miracle is going to happen in. And we're going to look back and, there's sometimes we're scared to even put, we're scared to even put a number or a location, or because we're like, God is so much bigger than that. And, we don't want to miss God because we wrote something down on a whiteboard, 6 years ago and said we were going to do that. But we always want to be sensitive to know that the miraculous happens in the preparation, and the miraculous happens in the movement. And so as we're moving and as we're carrying our pot of water, I just believe that, God's turning it into some of the best things that we're ever going to experience. And I almost want to write some of this down, and you and I talk again in 10 years, and let's compare answers and see what happened, because I have a feeling that I'm just going to look back and say, Michael, it was only God, man. Only God.
Amen.
Only God. So, but that's kind of the spiritual side of it. But that's who we are, and that's what we believe. But just seeing God, grow our church, grow our leadership, and grow leaders out of our church. And we want to impact the community. We want to impact the marketplace. We want to impact the ministry place with the leaders that we raise up out of our church, and that God's impacting their lives and redefining their lives.
That's awesome. Well, hey, you and I are on 10 years from now.
All right.
Let's do
I'll be there.
Yeah, no, I'm confident that God is going to do the miraculous through the church. And I love the lessons that you shared in that, just in terms of it is important, especially for all those that are listening to a podcast like this on the administrative side of church and the business side of church, if you will. It's important to be able to have those, like you said, plans, those plans in place, those structures through which God can work. So, hey, we so appreciate you. We appreciate those encouragements, and I wish we could go on, but we're coming up on our time here.
Right,
so,
all right.
Matt, I'm sure there are some folks that are listening that would just love to get in touch with you, maybe want to learn about Northrock. What's the best way for them to do that?
There's a couple ways you can reach us. One is our website, and that's northrocksa.com. So Northrock SA, basically northrocksanantonio.com. That's one way to reach us. You can find us on social media, Northrock Church. You'll see us here in San Antonio. We're on Instagram, Facebook. You can personally find me on Instagram and Facebook, Matt Martin, And then on Instagram, it's mattmartin96. You'll be able to find me. Or you can email me. It's always one of the easiest ways. And that is Matt, M-A-T-T, at northrocksa.com. And you can reach out that way. And I'd love to hear from some people. I love sharing stories. I love hearing other stories and what God is doing in other churches and in the lives of other pastors and executive pastors, especially, obviously.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for making yourself available to do that, to have those conversations. I really encourage folks to do that. Just to kind of pick back up on one of the things that Matt shared, we really have been excited here at ECFA to partner with just a growing number of churches that are seeking that ECFA certification as a way to enhance trust in their church. And so you can check out the brand new simplified application process at ecfa.church/join. Or you can just email me at michael@ecfa.org, and we'll definitely make sure that you get taken care of in that way. The first step is just very easy, and it only takes 10 minutes. And again, that's at ecfa.church/join. You can also enjoy so many other great resources to equip your church for integrity, many of the things that Matt and I have talked about today at ecfa.church. And we just want to say thanks again for taking the time to join us on the podcast today. We appreciate all those who have tuned in and the important work that you do in the church, and look forward to connecting again soon on another Excellence in Church Administration podcast.